All right, so we're diving in today to a topic that's a bit of a head scratcher, and I think it's going to be a fun one.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be interesting, I think.
We've got this 13th century scholar,
Yeah.
a religious scholar, Ibn Taymiyyah from Damascus.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's sparking all these debates, even now, like centuries later, in these like modern intellectual circles about whether he was a philosopher or not.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how people grapple with him because he's such a strong figure.
You've got some folks comparing him to Averroes, like he's
Right.
up there, with the philosophical heavyweights.
Yeah.
And then you have others who are just like, no way, he's totally anti-reason, just stuck in the past, like
Yeah.
a pure traditionalist.
Right.
It's a wild contrast.
Huge contrast. Yeah, and I think that's part of what makes him so fascinating to study.
So who was this guy? I mean, Ibn Taymiyyah.
Yeah, who was he?
Well, he lived from 1263 to 1328.
Okay.
So right there in the heart of the 13th century.
Yeah.
And he was a prominent Sunni religious scholar, very active, a real activist, you could say. And he was all about reform.
Yeah.
He wanted to like shake things up in Islam. But his way of doing that was by going back to the basics.
Yeah.
He was really focused on the Quran, the Sunnah, the practices of the Prophet Muhammad, and like the understanding of Islam from those very first generations of Muslims, the Salaf.
The Salaf, yeah.
And you can't really talk about the Salafism movement that we see globally today without acknowledging this guy.
No, you can't, because in many ways he's a foundational figure for that whole movement.
Yeah.
And this focus that he had, this going back to the sources, going back to an original understanding, it's something that you see pop up time and time again in different religious traditions, different intellectual traditions.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. It's like this recurring theme in history. So our goal today is to really like explore why some people see Ibn Taymiyyah as a philosopher.
Yeah.
We're going to be diving into the arguments that are made for that perspective.
Right.
And we're going to use the source material that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Sticking to the sources.
But we're also not going to ignore those counter-arguments.
No, definitely not.
The reasons why other folks say, hold on, he's not a philosopher, he's primarily a religious traditionalist.
Right.
So we're going to try and give you a sense of that debate without, totally overwhelming you with details.
That's the key, right? Finding that balance.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is that the line between what's theology, what's philosophy, maybe even what's law back then, wasn't as like sharply drawn as we might think of it now.
Oh, absolutely. And especially in that historical context, someone who's engaging very deeply with religious texts could still be doing something that we would consider to be philosophical. They might be using philosophical tools, making philosophical arguments.
Totally, yeah. So to really get into this, we've got like a few key areas of his thought that we're going to hit.
Okay, sounds good.
First, we're going to talk about his ontology.
Okay.
And he's got some surprisingly physicalist ideas about what exists in the world.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Then we're going to get into his epistemology.
Okay.
Like how he thought we gain knowledge. And this includes a whole critique of Aristotelian logic.
Oh, wow. Okay, so he's not just accepting what's already out there.
No, he's taking on the big guys.
Yeah.
Then we're going to look at his philosophical theology.
Mm-hmm.
So that's his rational way of defending Islamic revelation.
Okay.
After that, we're going to look at his theory of religion, which is super interesting because he's got this like natural social dimension to it.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And then lastly, we'll touch on his metaethics,
All right.
where he seems to lean towards a consequentialist kind of thinking. So are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's start with this physicalist ontology, because that's not something you would typically expect from a 13th century religious scholar.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So Ibn Taymiyyah's ontology was physicalist or materialist.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Yeah, break that down for me.
Well, unlike a lot of other Islamic thinkers at that time who were really into Greek philosophy,
Right.
he believed that everything that exists, and I mean everything including God, is concrete.
Okay.
Meaning it's like a real thing.
Right.
And that it's capable of being perceived by our senses,
Interesting.
at least in principle.
Okay.
We've got sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch.
Yeah.
So for him, if something cannot be sensed in any way, shape, or form, it simply doesn't exist.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement.
It is a bold statement.
Especially for that time period, because you have so many philosophical traditions that are really emphasizing these immaterial realms or these abstract entities as the ultimate reality.
Right.
So he's going very much against the grain here.
Yeah. And if we think about like the bigger picture of Islamic intellectual history, you had a lot of thinkers who had integrated these Neoplatonic ideas.
Right.
And Neoplatonism suggests this hierarchy of being where the most real thing is the purely intellectual realm.
Yeah,
And he's basically rejecting that whole framework.
it seems like he is.
So it's not just like a minor point. It really reshapes how he understands what is even real, what exists.
Exactly, and has implications for how he's going to approach everything else.
Totally. Yeah. And this gets even more interesting when we talk about the unseen world.
Okay, the unseen world. So we're talking about Alam al-Ghaib.
Yeah, exactly. Alam el-Ghaib. So for him, this wasn't some immaterial or just purely intellectual kind of space.
Okay.
He thought of it as being made up of actual concrete things, just like our world, with their own dimensions in time and space.
So it's not that it's different in kind, it's just different in how accessible it is to us.
Exactly.
Okay.
The key difference is that we as human beings, we don't always have the ability to perceive those things.
Right.
But they're still concrete.
Okay.
So think about God, angels, the afterlife, even the human soul.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he did believe that the soul was distinct from the body, but he didn't think of it as being immaterial.
Okay.
And he even believed that prophets could perceive aspects of this unseen world through visions and dreams.
Right.
And that believers will actually see God in the afterlife with their own eyes.
Int-
So it's not that these things are beyond our senses entirely. It's just that our ability to perceive them is limited.
So it's a matter of our limitations, not the limitations of reality itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he even went so far as to say that God is actually more readily perceivable than anything else because of the perfection of his being.
That's fascinating.
And on the flip side, he's basically saying that this incorporeal God that you find in some schools of Kalam theology and among philosophers like Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd,
Right.
that's practically non-existent. It's just a concept in our mind.
Like it's a mental construct.
Okay.
So he's really pushing back against a lot of the established views.
He is. And this emphasis on sensory perception as like the main criteria for what's real and what exists, it's like a key to understanding how he approaches everything else.
Yeah, and lays the groundwork for all of his other ideas.
Totally. And it doesn't stop there. He's also got some interesting views on universals.
Okay, universals. So we're talking about these general concepts like redness or humanity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he basically denied that they have any real existence outside of our minds.
Okay.
So forget Plato's forms, those independent forms,
Yeah.
or even the Aristotelian idea of these essences that exist within individual things.
Yeah.
He's saying, no, those shared meanings, those universal concepts that we create, those only exist in our minds.
This is really interesting, and it kind of puts him in the philosophical camp of nominalism or conceptualism.
Yeah.
And what's really cool here is that he's, again, aligning himself with a particular philosophical view, even though he's working within this deeply religious framework.
Yeah.
So it's not just a minor semantic point. He's really changing how we understand the relationship between our minds and the world.
Totally. Yeah.
He's challenging these really fundamental ideas about how knowledge works.
Yeah. Take the example of human.
Okay, human.
He'd say there's no such thing as an absolute human out there in the world that all of us are like participating in.
Okay.
There are only individual concrete human beings. And it's our minds that then group us together under this idea of this mental universal.
So the shared meaning is in our minds, not out there in the world.
Precisely.
Okay.
So scholars, they often call this nominalism.
Right.
But some people say actually conceptualism might be a better fit because it acknowledges that these universals do exist, but as mental constructs.
Yeah.
Now, he's not saying that individual things don't share anything at all.
Okay.
He paves that all existing things participate in the very act of being.
Okay.
And they each have their own unique essence, their own distinct whatness that makes them an individual.
Right.
So there's no like universal whiteness floating around out there.
Yeah.
But a piece of snow and a piece of ivory, they both exist.
Right.
And they each possess their own unique instance of whiteness.
So a shared reality of existence, but distinct and unique individual essences.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like it.
But here's another interesting thing.
Yeah.
Even though he denies that universals exist outside the mind, he strongly affirms that universal rational principles, those are real.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So things like the law of non-contradiction. Right. Something can't be both A and not A at the same time.
Yeah.
Or the law of the excluded middle. Something is either A or not A. There's no in-between.
Right.
He thinks these logical axioms hold true in our minds and in the external world.
So even though he's denying those abstract universals, he's still affirming these fundamental rational principles.
Yeah, and he's grounding them in the very structure of reality as he understands it.
Exactly.
He also affirms efficient causality, the idea that everything that comes into being has a cause.
Yeah.
And he thinks this is something that we just understand naturally, like just from existing.
Mm-hmm.
We know we are brought into being, so there must be a creator.
Right.
And this leads him to argue that there's this innate human understanding of God's existence.
That makes sense.
So even though he really emphasizes sensory experience as this primary source of knowledge,
Right.
he also acknowledges these fundamental rational principles
Yeah.
as being like deeply embedded in our minds and in the fabric of reality.
Okay, so he's not totally anti-reason.
No, not at all.
Okay.
He just has a very particular way of understanding it.
All right, so we've got this really unique take on ontology. Now let's get into how he actually thought we gain knowledge, his epistemology.
All right, so Ibn Taymiyyah said we have a few fundamental ways of knowing.
Wait, lay it on me.
First and foremost is sense perception,
Okay, makes sense.
which is what we experience through our five senses
Right.
and also our internal senses,
Okay.
like feeling hungry or joyful.
Yeah.
And this is totally in line with his physicalist ontology.
Right, because if reality is fundamentally concrete and perceivable,
Yeah,
then our senses are going to be that primary channel for knowledge.
exactly.
Okay.
Now, interestingly, he even includes a form of perception of God in this category,
Oh, wow.
both in this life and in a more complete way in the afterlife.
So that's an interesting twist.
Yeah, he considered sense perception to be like immediate and beyond any reasonable doubt.
Okay.
Then we have report, which is basically knowledge we get through the perceptions of other people.
Okay, so like testimony, essentially.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this can range from everyday stuff, like what someone tells you about the weather,
Yeah.
to divine revelation itself.
Oh, wow. Okay, so a pretty wide range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for him, reports can give us certain knowledge if they're transmitted widely enough.
Okay, so it's not just any report. It has to meet certain criteria?
Yeah, exactly. He's got these specific criteria.
Okay.
So it has to be transmitted across like tons of different independent sources.
Right.
So many that it would be impossible for them to have all colluded or fabricated the information.
Okay, so like a mass independent verification.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like think about the Quran.
Right.
It's been transmitted across like so many different chains of transmission.
Yeah.
He even considers certain historical reports from the early Muslim community to be this reliable.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So this concept he uses, it's called abundant transmission.
Okay.
Or tawatur.
Tawatur. Okay.
It becomes really important in his epistemology.
So tawatur is this pathway to certainty that goes beyond just our own individual experiences.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's how we can be sure about things that happened in the past or things that were revealed.
Right, because it establishes reliability.
Yeah.
Okay.
The third way of knowing is reason.
Oh, okay.
And for him, reason is both this faculty that we have in our minds
Right.
and also the immediate knowledge that we have.
Okay.
Like those logical axioms that we talked about.
Right.
And basic moral intuitions,
Okay.
like just knowing that God deserves our worship.
Yeah.
So as a faculty reason, lets us form general concepts from our specific experiences
Right.
and make logical inferences.
Okay.
So he's not dismissing reason. He's not saying it's unreliable.
No, he's giving it a specific role.
Exactly.
Okay.
It helps us process the information from our senses
Right.
and grasp these fundamental truths.
All right, cool.
And then finally, there's Fia.
Okay, Fida.
This is like our innate natural constitution that all human beings share.
Okay.
He thought of it as this God-given predisposition to believe in God and worship him.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, it's kind of like how a newborn instinctively knows how to nurse.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So our Fia includes like basic principles of thought and morality.
Mm-hmm.
But he also realized that it can get clouded or corrupted by negative influences or bad reasoning.
Right.
And that's where prophecy and revelation come in.
Okay, so they refine and correct our Fida.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh.
it's within this framework of how we know things that he launches this whole critique of Aristotelian logic.
Oh, okay. So this is where he gets into that.
Yeah.
All right.
Particularly how it was developed by Ibn Sina.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is where a lot of people see him acting like a philosopher
Yeah.
because he's engaging with this major intellectual tradition
Mm-hmm.
and he's offering a counter-argument.
Right. And a detailed one from what you're saying.
Yeah, his work is often called the refutation of the logicians.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's pretty substantial.
So to really understand his critique, We should probably lay out the basics of Avicennan logic, that foundationalist logic.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay, so essentially, Avicennan logic is built on this idea that we build new knowledge from basic self-evident knowledge through reasoning.
Okay.
Because if you didn't have that foundation, then you would just have an infinite regress. You'd need to prove every single thing.
Right. Yeah, that would be a problem.
So they divide knowledge into two main categories. Conceptualization, which is like forming a mental concept of something,
Okay.
and assent, which is basically saying, yes, I agree that this statement is true.
Okay, so forming the concept and then saying, yes, I agree with it.
Exactly.
Got it.
And then some concepts are considered primary, like the idea of a thing or an existent.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things you just kind of immediately grasp. Other concepts are acquired. And we get those through these real definitions that are supposed to capture the essence of a thing.
Okay.
So like defining a human as a rational animal.
Mm-hmm.
For Avicenna, these definitions actually link our mental concepts to the real essences that exist in the world.
Okay.
And then assent can also be primary or acquired.
Mm-hmm.
And it ranges from just probable to absolutely certain.
Okay.
So the highest form of acquired certain assent is achieved through this thing called a demonstrative syllogism.
Right, the syllogism.
Which is basically a logical argument that consists of two premises that lead to a certain conclusion.
Okay, yeah, so it's a very specific structure.
Yes, a very specific logical structure.
All right, so it's this whole system that's like all about definitions reflecting real essences and then deductive reasoning to reach certain knowledge.
Precisely. And Ibn Taymiyyah is going to come in and challenge all of that.
Yeah, he's not buying it.
All right, so where does he start?
He goes straight for those real definitions.
Okay, the definitions.
He says definitions don't actually grasp some real essence that exists out there in the world.
Oh,
They're just linguistic conventions,
okay.
like agreed upon ways that we use words.
So it's more about language and how we use it than about some deep reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's not alone in this. He actually aligns with some Kalam theologians on this point.
Interesting.
And what's really fascinating is that he's going right to the core of Avicennan logic, that notion that our definitions are accurate representations of reality.
Yeah, he's shaking the foundations.
He is. He follows the Ash'ari theologian Al-Razi and takes it even further.
Oh, okay. How so?
He says these Aristotelian definitions, they don't even help us form new concepts.
Okay.
He thinks all of our basic concepts are primary and they come directly from our experiences.
Okay, so from our senses.
Yeah, both external and internal.
So he's an empiricist.
Yeah, you could say that.
All right.
Like he'd say you can't really understand the definition of human as rational animal unless you already have some idea of what animal and rational mean.
Yeah.
And you get those ideas from your experiences.
Exactly.
So for him, definitions aren't giving us any new fundamental knowledge.
Okay.
It's all about those experiences, those encounters with the world.
So conceptualization is empirical.
Exactly.
Ooh.
And then he turns his attention to the demonstrative syllogism.
Okay, the syllogism.
He doesn't actually say it's formally invalid.
Okay.
He acknowledges that if the premises are certain, then the conclusion follows logically.
Right.
But he's like this whole complex system of syllogistic figures and conditions.
Yeah.
It's way too complicated.
Okay.
It's not how we actually get certain knowledge in most cases.
So he sees it as more of an academic exercise than a practical tool.
Yeah, and he actually has this great quote about it.
Oh, what's the quote?
He says it's like lean camel meat on a rugged mountain peak.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like it's more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, I get it.
So he's acknowledging that it's technically correct, but he thinks it's cumbersome and unnecessary.
All right, so if he's not a fan of the syllogism, how does he think we achieve certainty?
Well, he argues that different people arrive at certainty in different ways.
Okay, that makes sense.
Some folks might need a middle term in a logical argument,
Right.
but others don't.
Okay.
And he says you don't always need two premises.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a single piece of evidence is enough,
Okay.
what he calls an indicand or a dalil,
A dalil.
if it's accompanied by what he calls a necessary entailment or a luzum.
Okay, so a dalil and a luzum.
Yeah.
What would be an example of that?
His favorite example is the existence of creation itself.
Okay.
He says this necessarily points to a creator.
Right.
You don't need a whole syllogism for that.
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful piece of evidence on its own.
Right. And this all goes back to his empiricism.
Okay.
He challenges the use of universal propositions within syllogisms when we're talking about the external world.
Okay, I can see where he's going with this.
Like, how can we ever be totally certain that all flames burn?
Right.
unless we've observed every single flame in existence.
Yeah. Which is impossible.
Exactly. It's impossible.
So you can never really have a universal premise about the external world.
Right. So he says any knowledge we get through these universal premises is always going to be probable at best.
Never absolutely certain.
Yeah. And this is a big challenge to the idea that you can get certain knowledge about the world through syllogisms.
He's really pushing the limits of logic here.
Yeah, and here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
He argues that the categorical syllogism, like this core element of Aristotelian logic,
Yeah.
is basically the same as analogical reasoning.
Oh, wow. Okay, so kies altamtio.
Yeah, kies altamtio.
And in traditional logic, analogy is usually seen as weaker than deductive reasoning.
Right, it's supposed to give you probable knowledge, not certain knowledge. But Ibn Taymiyyah is saying, no, they're basically the same.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because the middle term in a syllogism is functioning the same way as that common characteristic that you use in an analogy.
So he's collapsing this distinction between deductive and analogical reasoning.
Yeah.
Bold move.
And he gives this example of date wine being forbidden
Okay.
by analogy to grape wine.
All right.
Because they both cause intoxication.
Right.
So intoxication is like that shared characteristic.
Right.
And it's the assumed cause of the prohibition.
Okay.
And then he shows how you could rephrase this as a categorical syllogism.
Okay, how's that?
All date wine is an intoxicant.
Right.
All intoxicants are forbidden. Therefore, date wine is forbidden.
Okay, so he's showing how they're structurally similar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then he says, the real question is, how do we know for sure that intoxication is the actual cause?
Right, because that's what makes the whole argument work.
And he's like, that's the same challenge we have with any syllogism.
Yeah. How do we know we've identified the right middle term?
Right. So he's saying the certainty of both depends on whether we've correctly identified that causal link.
And for Ibn Taymiyyah, where does that ultimate certainty come from?
You guessed it, divine revelation.
Of course, divine revelation.
So in the case of the intoxicants, he points to the consensus of the Muslim community and the clear statements from the Prophet Muhammad
Right.
that all intoxicants are forbidden.
Okay.
So our own observations might not give us certainty,
Yeah.
but revelation can.
So you could almost say he's like a skeptic, but a skeptic who's saved by religion.
That's a good way of putting it.
Because he's using his critique of logic not to throw out reason entirely,
Yeah,
but to point to revelation as this higher source of knowledge.
exactly.
Okay, so that was a pretty deep dive into his epistemology. Now let's move on to his philosophical theology.
All right, so here's where we see him engaging with all these theological and philosophical concepts
Right.
to explain his understanding of God and the divine attributes.
Okay, so how does he approach that?
Well, when it comes to theological language, how we talk about God, he takes a very traditionalist approach.
Okay, traditionalist.
Yeah, within the Hanbali school of thought, which is known for being quite strict.
Right.
He insists that we have to describe God exactly as the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad did,
Okay.
affirming both the negative attributes.
Right, what God is not.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the positive attributes.
What God is.
Yeah, and he's really emphasizing Tanza God's absolute incomparability and transcendence.
Right, so we can't liken God to created beings.
Exactly. No Tamtil and no Tashbri.
Okay.
But at the same time, he stresses that we have to affirm God's attributes.
Right.
Like hearing and seeing.
Yeah.
But in their plain apparent sense, as understood by the early Muslims, the Salaf,
Okay.
without distorting them or stripping them of meaning no Tairif or Taifil.
So it's this balancing act between affirming the attributes and upholding God's transcendence.
Yeah, it's a tightrope walk.
And a classic theological problem.
It really is.
So how does he manage that?
Well, he tries to navigate this by sticking very closely to the scriptural descriptions and the interpretations of the earliest generations of Muslims.
Okay, so he's going back to the sources.
Yeah, always back to the sources. And his main target in this area is Kalam theology,
Kalam theology.
both the Mutazili school and the Ash'ari school.
Okay.
He argues that they often start by imagining God's attributes to be like those of creatures.
Okay.
And then they try to reinterpret or deny the attributes that seem too human-like,
Right.
like anthropomorphic.
So they might say God's hand is actually just a metaphor for power.
Yeah, or God sitting isn't really sitting, it's just possessing dominion.
Okay, I see.
Ibn Taymiyyah is totally against this.
Yeah.
He says we have to affirm all of God's attributes equally in a way that fits his unique and perfect nature.
So he sees their methodology as flawed from the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're starting with a false premise that God is like creation.
Right.
And then they have to come up with all these reinterpretations to try and fix it.
Yeah.
He says, no, just accept the scriptural descriptions as they are
Okay.
in their proper theological context.
All right, so he's very much a literalist when it comes to scripture.
Yeah, but it's not a simple literalism.
Okay, how so?
He also strongly criticizes the esoteric interpretations,
So, okay.
like those found in groups like the Ismaili Shis
Right?
and among some philosophers.
Okay.